My name is Al Tobias, and I'm the ministry leader here, and I'm a recovering alcoholic and a believer who believes in the fact that without God's power in my life, I would be probably dead today. And that's really the truth of it. Amen. I came into this program a long time ago. I am going to be celebrating a birthday on Monday. And I'm not going to tell you how old I am, you're going to have to figure it out, but I was 22 when I came into this program, and that was 35 years ago. No, it was 37 years ago. I still lying. 37 years ago. Yeah, and I've been around this program for a long time, and tonight, what we're going to do, here at Celebrate Recovery, we try to break it up for you. Last week, I want to give a shout out to the guys that gave their testimony. Stacy shared his story last week. He's here. Give him a big hand. And typically what we do is a testimony every 2 months, and then we'll have a guest speaker on our first week of the month. And next month it's going to be Dr. David Sutton. He's going to be bringing us the message next month. But during the course of the month and the correlating month to the steps, I try to teach 1 or 2 lessons on really what the step is about. And we're in the month of March, and we're talking about the 3rd step. And for those of you who were here last month, if you remember, we really looked at the 2nd step, which was really talking about coming to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And I broke it down into 2 parts. Really that first part, which is really the opening of the door to a faith, to something that would work, something that they talked about in the rooms that was the solution to my problem. See, my problem was that drugs and alcohol were destroying my life and ultimately wanted to kill me. In the book of John 10, it kind of describes this. It talks about the thief who comes at night to rob and destroy and to kill. And I could really identify with that because in my life there was so much wreckage. Unfortunately, I didn't grab onto this program in the very beginning. I was in and out of the rooms for about 9 years. I would get 3 months of sobriety and then I would relapse. I would get 6 months and I would relapse. I would get a year. I actually went out the day after I celebrated a year one time. It was like crazy, crazy. And it was just such a mystery to me that why would I keep doing these things that I knew were wrong for me, and why was I so weak? And it really came down to coming to a greater understanding of the fact that I am weak, and that there's a power greater than me that I need to have forward, front, and face of me every day of my life. So tonight I want to begin kind of a 3-part message, and I want to talk about this 3rd step. And in Celebrate Recovery, we have a principle that correlates to that. And you have it on your handout there. If you notice on your handout, I give a little advertising. This weekend, I reread this book by a guy named Nick B. And it's called The Good Book and the Big Book. And it's AA's Roots in the Bible. And I encourage you to read this, and I would love to encourage you to actually go out and buy this book. As a matter of fact, I'm thinking I might just buy like 20 copies of these and have them here for sale, because I believe that we are so ignorant, and when I mean ignorant, I mean unlearned about the early days of recovery and how they stayed sober. They didn't have a big book. They didn't have 12 steps. They didn't have sponsors. They didn't have treatment centers. And they had almost 100% success in sobriety. Curious, isn't it? And if you go back and you read about 1930, what really happened can be something that we can learn from and I think reorient into our recovery programs today. I want to give you a little bit of my opinion, and you know what they say about opinions, okay? But I do have, like I said, 37 years of opinions, and for what they're worth, I think that this 3rd step for me, and for so many people, is actually a stumbling block. I think it's something that some people, they kind of go through this first step. Yeah, I got the powerless, you know. I accept that I'm powerless over my addiction. There's these steps that were, you know, when it comes to the third step, I sort of stumble over it. It's like, if you listen in the AA meetings, you'll hear people say, it's just make a decision. And it's like, about what? It's, well, just make a decision, you know? And I've had so many people fail to be able to explain, what am I deciding? What is it that this decision is about? And it's kind of self-explanatory. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to read the words, turn my life, my will and my life over to the care of God, and then somebody as you understand Him. But this is the first place in the program where God is actually mentioned in the steps, in the third step. And understanding our roots is so important to what God are they talking about? Who is this God? And here at Celebrate Recovery, we identify the God that the founders of AA were talking about. That it's not a mystery. It's not this great, you know, supernatural, you know, tapped into a doorknob somewhere. It's a creator, almighty creator God who loved us, who planned us, who had intention and purpose for us here on this planet, and who has a purpose for our lives. And that His intention for you is the same as me, that He doesn't want me to relapse. He wants me to live in sobriety. That He wants me to live a life of meaning and purpose. And I can know that about God's will. But tonight I just want to talk to you about, I want to work this backwards actually. Tonight I want to talk about life and what is life. And then next week I want to talk about this thing we call our will. And what is our will? I think we all have some basic understandings of these things, but I think what the writers were really talking about was something much deeper than many of us have ever done before. And then on Easter Sunday, I'm going to talk about this decision and what's involved in this decision and what the early pioneers of AA were really talking about, what they really meant the decision looked like. So life, it's my life, right? Bon Jovi said, it's my life, right? And I'm not going to sing any more than that. But you know what I'm talking about, right? It's my life. I can do what I want. Frank Sinatra said, I did it my way. And so did I. Mm-hmm. And so did we.
Yeah.
Didn't we?
Amen.
We did. How'd that work for you?
Not too good.
Not so good.
Yeah.
Not so good. Yeah, I am surrounded by people who know me well. And that's why it's so great to be here. No, I didn't do so good. I was thinking about this. Actually, I was going to call some friends and go out boating yesterday. And I was looking at the weather, and I knew that it was going to be windy and that the water was going to be rough. And I really opted out yesterday morning at the last minute because there was 4-foot waves out on the Gulf, and the bay had 2-foot chop. And it's not that, you know, we would have sunk, but there's something that I've learned about going out on rough days like that. As a matter of fact, my boating experience goes back to when I was a little kid, as a baby. I grew up on a lake up in Wisconsin. My great-grandpa lived on a place called Silver Lake in Watoma, Wisconsin. And my grandpa was, he was a naval captain. He had many boats. He lived on this lake because he loved to be on the water. He loved to go boating. And I benefited greatly from that being a child because I adopted his passion. I just love to be out on the water. It's awesome. It's like being in the mountains or being on the water. And those are my two favorite places to be. So growing up, I was very fortunate in that I was out on the water probably when I was 2 years old. As a matter of fact, my dad has a picture of me laying on the bottom of the lake looking up at him through about 2 feet of water because I had fallen off the pier, and he was taking pictures at the time, and I was at the bottom of the lake like that. It's the coolest picture, you know? And I wasn't scared. I was just like, hello, you know, underwater. It was like cool. I loved it. It didn't scare me. I wasn't afraid. And I've never really been afraid of the water. I've been in some conditions going across Lake Michigan that got real hairy in a sailboat one night in a hurricane, or when tornadoes were out on the lake. But I learned some lessons from my grandpa at a very early age. My first boat was an aluminum Lone Star, if there's any old timers who've been out on the water, was a Lone Star rowboat with a 25 horsepower Evinrude on it. And my grandpa taught me how to go out and be a navigator of the waters on this little rowboat. And what he did was he took me around the lake, he showed me where the sandbars were, he showed me where the deep waters were, he showed me that I needed to always be aware of what was going on around me. You know, when you're driving a car, it's always focused forward, but when you're boating, you need to be knowing what's going on behind you, all around you, and in front of you. It taught me about docking, how to mix fuel, how to tip the engine up, all of these things. He also had an excursion boat on Lake Winnebago that was like a 38-foot sightseeing boat, and it had twin engines, and at the age of 12, I was driving that and docking that large boat. I learned how to sync dual motors, how to get the RPMs going exactly by the sound of the motors, how to sync the engines so that they were going the same speed, and all of these things. When I moved down here to Florida, I took the knowledge that I had with boating, and I sort of forgot about it a little bit. It was much different for me. I was used to being in the inland waters, and I had heard about, you know, being careful here, but my first week that I moved down here, I came down with a boat that kind of went real fast. It was a go-fast boat. And we lived in Bradenton. My fiance and I went to Marina Jack's for dinner, and we stayed a little bit too long, and it had gotten dark. And now I didn't have a spotlight, I didn't have any navigational instruments on this boat. This boat only did one thing, and it was go fast. And we left, it was late, and I really had no knowledge of Sarasota Bay. I'm like, wow, it's like a big lake, you know, it's like deep, right? And so we headed back for Bradenton. And I remember seeing, you know, the lights on the shore over there, the lights on the shore over there. I could see the spotted lights marking the channel over there, and I'm like, I knew where I was going straight ahead, and so I had my bearings. And so I'm going fast, about 45, 50 miles an hour, and it's pitch black. And all of a sudden, my motor starts to hit the bottom of the middle of this big lake, and I'm like, how can it be this shallow here? And so when you back off on the power, if you know about this, the boat settles, right? Well, I was in about 6 inches of water. And this boat drew about that much water, if you know what I mean. So we've been up on the plane, and the boat dropped down. So here we are, it's 10 o'clock at night, and it's pitch dark. I have no idea where I am. We get out of the boat, and we're standing in water like this. And it's like, what are we gonna do now? And so we call the towing service, and they're like, well, where are you? And we're like, I have no idea, I'm in the middle of Sarasota Bay. Well, what's your navigational points? I had no navigational points. Well, I'm sort of here, I'm sort of in the middle of there. Her and I tried to push that boat out, and it was low tide, and we worked on it for 2 hours and finally gave up. And at midnight, we're soaking wet, and it's cold, and they didn't find us. And we sit there at 6 o'clock in the morning. And it was not a fun night. I don't care how much you love somebody. When you have done that to your spouse, and I was like, you get out and push. I'm gonna try and make us go, you know. And this was like one of those. You should have had one of these videos, because she's in the back and I'm giving it throttle, and I'm throwing, you know, oyster shells back at her, and she's not a happy camper. So my point in this whole story is that, you know, my grandpa taught me not to do stupid stuff like that. And I still did stupid stuff like that. Had I taken the lessons that I had learned from him and applied them, which was get a navigational map, learn the waters that you're in, you know, I don't know if you guys know this, but the east side of Sarasota Bay is cool. The west side of Sarasota Bay, not so much. It is very shallow. And it looks deep when you look out over the bay, it looks great. but there's oyster reefs, there's grass flats, and there's a lot of shallow water. My life, it's kind of been like that. I think most of us really could say that, we had some positive influences in our lives, right? People who were telling us, I recommend that you do this if you want to get this. And what's the problem with that? You have the same problem I have. You say, it's my life. That may be true for them, but it's not going to happen to me. I'm different. It's my life. I'm going to do it the way I want to do it. And then we beat ourselves up. We beat ourselves on the shore, or we tear off the bottom of our boat, too. Did some damage to my boat in the process. I think every one of us get to this program and we say, I wish I had someone else's life. And when we come to this program, what we start to see is that there's people's lives in this program that have been around for a while. It's like, I want what they have. And how do I get what they got? And hopefully if you've seen some of those people in the program and you ask them, hopefully they're the right people and they'll give you the answer to that, which is, they found a power and a solution that works in their life. I kind of made a specialty of teaching at, Salvation Army with Purpose-Driven Life, because man's been asking this question from the very beginning. What's the meaning of life? Why am I here? What's the existence? Does my life matter? What's the significance to my life? And Rick Warren does this great job. He talks about 3 levels of living. He says you can live on survival mode, which is what most people do. I work so that I can eat, so that I can put shelter over my head, and I go back and I do it next Monday, and I get on this grind, and I got a job I don't like, and my kids, I don't know if I like my kids, and and it just kind of goes on from week to week, and day to day, and on and on and on. And it's survival. And it's really no different than somebody standing in a food line for food. It's really the basic way of life. And most of us followed that path. It's sort of, you live your life the way you want it, but we end up with a job we don't like. Well, we go to it for 35 years so that we can retire and, and whatever. He talks about success mode, which is, if I only had all these things in my life, if I had enough toys and whatever, that then I would be happy. And what we find in success mode of life is that no matter what you have, somebody's always got more. Whatever you have seems to rust or fade away. It loses its shine, it loses its new car smell, ultimately. But he talks about a level that comes right out of the scriptures. And the second part of that John verse in John chapter 10 is, the thief comes to rob, kill, and destroy. But I am the good shepherd, and I come that you might have a life and have a life abundantly. That's the life I wanted. I wanted an abundant life. And Rick Warren talked about the fact that significance, living a life of not survival, not success, but significance, is the life that he wants for everyone in this room. He wants you to find your meaning and your purpose, and that he wants you to be with him forever. That his plans for you last eternally. They're not here just about earth, being on earth. That video shows the fact that in this life you're going to have troubles, you're going to have difficulties, you're going to have disappointments. I had a terrible day today. I got to tell you, I had a terrible day. I had a huge disappointment with a person who I love and care about. It was even hard for me, really to prepare to come up here today because I wanted to bail in the life.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But his story reminds me of how much I have to be grateful for. Romans 12:1 is the key verse for this step and for this principle. And it says, therefore, in view of what God's done for you, Alan, offer yourself a living sacrifice, wholly acceptable and pleasing to him. This is your spiritual act of worship. Don't conform any longer to the patterns of the world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And then you will know my good and perfect will for your life. That's the life I want. That's the life I want. What is spirituality? That's like asking somebody to smell a rose and say, describe what you smell. Think about it. Describe what a smell of a rose is like. I don't know. There aren't words to even explain it. And for me, my spirituality is a lot like that. It's a lot like that. I want to close kind of quickly to get you guys into your groups tonight. I was going to read something. I encourage you actually to read from the 12 and 12 this month. Focus on the fact that step 3 says this, that it's about the opening of the door, and it calls for affirmative action. That the essence of the third step comes right out of the scriptures, and the wording that they use is the same wording where Jesus says, "Seek me and you'll find me, knock and the door will be open to you." All the third step about is this willing heart that says, "God, I want you to direct my life. I have screwed it up. I need your direction. I need your guidance in my life." I got this cool text yesterday. He's in the room. I didn't tell him I was going to read it. I'm not going to embarrass him. But it touched me in such an important way. In contrast to what's going on today, I have yesterday to hold on to this text because it says, "Good morning, my friend Alan. I had one of the best days of recovery yesterday. I golfed in the afternoon with my son and my big brother, who I thought I'd never talk to again. I made amends both living and financially with him. He told me he was proud of me. Then had dinner out at the Cortez, watching the sunset with my entire family. Sounds corny, but it was almost surreal how good my heart felt at the end of the day. And on the way home, what went through my mind was how I could never have done this without the grace of God and people like you. Can't thank you enough, my friend." That moved me in such a way because this person 2.5 years ago came to our doors, and he'd been hooked on heroin for 7 years, and he burned every bridge, and he had nobody that loved him or cared for him anymore. His family wouldn't talk to him, his boys wouldn't talk to him. And he came into this program, and he did something different than I see a lot of people do. He had the option of taking a shortcut in this program. He said, "No, I'm going to do the right thing." And the right thing meant going to Salvation Army when he really didn't have to. And he didn't know what to expect. And he made one of those decisions that when you see people making that, you go, "You know what? This person's got a shot." Because our problem is that I want to do it my way. I want to believe that water is all safe, and that I'm different, and that I can navigate it, and that I don't need to know. Ignorance is bliss, right? And I think most people go through their lives. Unfortunately, we have a gift called recovery. If it wasn't for my addiction, I wouldn't be up here today. I wouldn't know the things that I know about life today. And that a life with Jesus Christ is a better life.
Amen.
It's a better life. It's a better life. And I want that for you guys. So, life. That song, the third song that we sang was "Run to Him," and that's the essence of it. He's like a daddy with a little kid that just wants you to run up and jump in his lap, and he wants to bless your life. He wants you to succeed. But he wants you to have a life of meaning and purpose, because a life without purpose, a life without meaning is an empty life. And that's when people choose to use drugs and alcohol, because they have nothing to live for.
Yep.
I have something to live for today. So many of you who I live for today. It's a great life. Let me pray. Father, just the gift of life is a precious miracle and a gift from you, and so I thank you for life. Many in this room would say that life has been a huge disappointment. It's not your intention. You say that we can live victorious lives, joy-filled lives, peace-filled lives. And I know that it's true. And so do many people in this room who have put their trust and their faith in you. So each day, I give you my life. You were the giver of life, and I give it back to you and say, man, just guide me, direct me, show me, bring people into my life to help me, because I need help. That's the humility with which God will honor. That's the humility with which we all need to embrace. I don't know it all, but I'm so glad that I have a God that does. It's in His name that we pray. Amen. Amen.
Amen.
Well, we're going to break up into our open share groups. If you're new, just follow somebody. They'll explain to you how it works. Take 5 minutes and have a good meeting, guys.